So now what we're going to do is apply all the color work to the color piece. Now initially what I'm going to do with this color piece is do a pass of black shading. Now I'm going to keep that very similar to the same technique I used to apply the black shading in the black and gray piece. Only what I'm going to do is just one initial pass. I'm just going to do the straight black shading and all the heavy shadow areas, you know, the tips of the wings, etc., all throughout the piece. But I'm just going to use that one first specific initial pass with the black, and then I'm going to shade that into color. I'm going to break it down into two different colors. I'm going to go from solid black into green. I'm going to fade the green out, and I'm going to fade the green into yellow, and then fill that in the rest of the way. Okay, so I'm going to start in the exact same place I started on this one, only will be the opposite. I'm going to start on the inside right upper wing and work my way down back into it this way. So again, I'm working away from where my hand is at to obstruct my view. And again, keeping in mind, I'm just going to start with the initial black shading, and that's it. I'm not taking the black any further than the first pass, and then the rest of it's going to be filled in with color. It's still going to be broken down in the same transition as far as how many times I break it down, but instead of having 3 passes of gray, I'm going to do 1 pass with black and then break the color down into 2 sessions, which will be my green and yellow shading. Now with color, I'm going to be utilizing the yellow as my highlight source, so I don't necessarily have to leave an empty negative skin area to utilize any kind of highlight. That's where the yellow is going to come into effect. So on my last pass with the yellow, instead of shading that out into skin tone, I'm going to go ahead and fill in all the negative skin with that yellow. And that will give me my complete transition from dark to light and my highlight source as well. So I'm going to go ahead and start with shading in the upper left hand corner right here. Now the reason being that I'm not actually breaking down my black as far as I did before with the black and gray piece is that if you try to utilize too much black and your gradation of black is too heavy and you bring it out too far, what happens when you go back in and fill in your color work, you're going to be darkening up your greens or whatever color you happen to be using. It's going to be darkened up too much to the point where you're not going to have a very bright, vivid color you're working with. If you bring the black out too far, it'll I don't want to say muddy it up, but it'll darken it up too much to the point where you won't have a nice, bright, vivid color transition. So you want to keep it relatively simple and basic and just work with the edges and just your very heavy dark areas of shading as far as where you're keeping your black at, and that'll still give you the same contrast and the same dramatic effect as far as your transition from solid black to a very light color, and it'll still keep that very nice bright transition of all your colors intact. So again, when you're doing color pieces with black shading, keep your black down to an absolute minimum, but still you want to have that nice, soft, subtle transition of shading from black into your green. So you want enough black to be there in order to get that proper amount of shading, but using the minimal amount as possible. Alright, so again, as you can see what I'm doing now, like I said before, just to reiterate, I'm virtually using the exact same technique and the same amount of shading in the same places I was before with the black and gray piece. And I'm going to keep working my way through this and until I we'll do one complete pass all the way through this with the initial preliminary black shading, and then I'm going to go ahead and move on to the color, and I will break that down and tell you exactly how to utilize the color with the blast shading that's already present there when I get to that point.